Thank you all for coming, especially you people up there. It's an honor to speak. When Leo Tolstoy and his older brother Nikolai were growing up, they had a game where they would dare one another to go into a corner and try not to think of a white bear. We're going to play a little game of white bear in about 5 minutes, because this is, after all, the Playhouse. I just want to start, however, by saying we live in a somewhat strange place, because up until very recently, the majority of citizens in British Columbia were born somewhere else. So how do you grow a cohesive culture in a place where people don't have a shared story and a shared history? This concerns me as the publisher of BC Book World, because I try and tell people what our culture is. If I ask you who was the first president of the United States, Abe Lincoln, you're going to get it. If I tell you who's the first Prime Minister of Canada, we hope the majority of it immediately are going to say Sir John A. Macdonald. I can make this room become very quiet very quickly by asking all you highly intelligent, educated people, who is the first Premier of British Columbia? No. James Douglas? No. John McCreight. The only person I know who knows the answer to that question is Sam. But fortunately, Sam does not know the answer to who's the first European that we know entered British Columbia waters. If you're really smart, you might say Valerianus, who actually had a Spanish name called Juan de Fuca. The circumstantial evidence is quite strong that he was here, but there's no proof. You might say Francis Drake, because there was a book which has since been disproved that he reached here. But the answer is, in 1774, the Spanish mariner Juan Perez, to use an apolitical or unpolitically correct term, was the European discoverer of British Columbia. Juan Perez, 1774. People don't know that. Why do we live in a place where people don't know those things? How did British Columbia get its name? Well, okay, you can understand the adjective British, but Columbia? Okay, that's the Columbia Fur Trading District in Oregon. So when they had a bilateral agreement and Queen Victoria supposedly chose a name, et cetera, British Columbia, so that makes sense. But how did the trading district get its name? Well, the Columbia River, so it was named after the river. How did the river get its name? Well, Robert Gray in 1792 was the first American to sail a ship up the Columbia River. His ship was named the Columbia Rediviva. Rediviva in Latin means revived. The Columbia, because it was refit in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It was built in Massachusetts in the early 1770s by descendants of the Plymouth Brethren, Puritans. So what were Puritans in the United States doing naming a ship after a little-known Italian seafarer? It's actually more likely that they were naming their ship after the famous proselytizer of Christianity in Ireland, St. Columb. But whether or not our province is named after an Irish saint or an Italian seafarer, what are we doing with this name, British Columbia? Most places on the planet who have colonial names get rid of them. British Guiana is now called Guyana. British Honduras is now called Belize. British Mesopotamia became Iraq. All those countries in Africa that had colonial names got rid of them. Why haven't we grown up where we live? Why doesn't people in British Columbia even consider this question at a time in which, as Peter Newman put it, roast beef is now an ethnic dish? This is a serious literary question. Why don't we question what it is we are called? Why don't we understand that this is important? So to play White Bear, you can just do me a little favor tonight. The one thing I want you to do is when you go home tonight, on your way home, I want you to try not to think of a better name for British Columbia. I'm very aware that I'm standing on the stage at the Vancouver Playhouse. The first and last time I was on this stage was 1969 at the end of a play called Grass and Wild Strawberries by George Riga, written by Cameron Riga's father. It was the play he wrote after The Ecstasy of Rita Joe. The Collectors, which then became known as Chilliwack, were playing in this rock musical, and everybody got onto the stage. So I'm aware I'm at the Vancouver Playhouse. And if we think Vancouver is a world-class city with our oceans and our mountains and our ridiculously high property values, which enable us to have a place where our sons and daughters cannot afford to live here after we've lived here. If we think this is a real world-class place, well, how can we be a city that can support the Canucks but not support Chekhov? Where is our flagship regional theater in Vancouver? So, we're just going to take a token 90 seconds, because I'm going to be under 7 minutes, to recognize the importance of arts and culture in our midst, and Indigenous arts and culture, original art and culture, so we can understand our shared society and have a sense of ourselves as a cohesive society. We have to understand our stories and our history, and art does that for us. And if we don't support our local culture, we don't have much of a society. So we're just going to take a second here and do a little token thing. You change my face. I'm reborn in your embrace. I rejoin the human race when you change my face. I've got water, I've got heat, I've got shoes to fit my feet, I've got shelter and food to eat, but without you in my arms I'm incomplete. I have traveled 7 seas, read the wise men of ancient Greece, talked to angels on my knees, but without you in my arms there is no peace. Please believe me when I say there's no one better. You fit the word lover to the letter. You change my face like the song Amazing Grace. No one else can take your place when you change my face. When you change my face. Try not to think of a better name for British Columbia.